of this function f of xy equals x divided by square root of 16 minus x squared minus y squared. What are the things to think about? Because I need to justify my answer. Okay, well, one of the things we need to think about is it possible for the denominator to be equal to 0? And the answer is no, it's not. So therefore, x squared plus y squared cannot equal 16. Of course, x squared plus y squared equals 16 is a circle of radius 4, center of the origin. As a matter of fact, if you look at that thing, 16 equals x squared plus y squared, well, what about this? 16 had better be greater than x squared plus y squared. And why is that? Well, because if it's not, then we would have a negative number underneath that radical, and we're not allowed to do that either. We're not allowed to divide by 0, we're not allowed to take the square root of a negative and still be a real valued function. And so, that means I really have an inequality to look at. 16 is greater than x squared plus y squared. Well, if I think about the graph of 16 equals x squared plus y squared, that would be a circle with radius 4, center of the origin. Hopefully everyone can see that. And so, the domain of our function is this circle right here. I drew the circle as if it had a dotted line because the border of the circle where x squared plus y squared equals 16 would cause the denominator to equal 0, and that's not allowed. So it's this, I guess we would call it an open circle. It's not a closed circle. Closed circle would include the border. So the domain is this open circle. And so there it is sketched. So another example says, find and sketch the domain of f and justify your answer. Well, the same issue holds that we can't have x squared minus y squared be bigger than 16, because then I'd have a negative number under the radical. I'm not allowed to do square root of a negative because that's not a real number. But there's another issue for this one, and the fact that y is in the denominator, we should realize right away that, oh, y can't be 0. So we know that x squared plus y squared has to be less than 16, and we also know that y can't be 0. So what does that look like in a picture? Well, notice that x squared plus y squared could be equal to 16 because we could have square root of 0 in the numerator, not denominator. So this time I drew a closed circle. I don't have dotted lines around it. It's the entire closed circle. But I also can't have y equal to 0 because y equal to 0 would make this denominator equal to 0, and I'm not allowed to do that. So what does that mean? Well, y equals 0 is another name for the x-axis. I don't know if you can see I tried to eliminate the x-axis from the domain of this function. I tried my best anyway to eliminate the x-axis. These are particularly hard, this kind of function, for MathCAD to graph because of domain restrictions. So this is a nice three-dimensional grapher, but there are some difficulties with it having to do with the domain.